I hate lowered cars because of this and this. And this. That's why today at the We Rent shop, we're going to embark on a multi-part series where I overhaul the suspension on my 2001 Mercedes Benz E55 AMG daily driver. The previous owner installed Bilstein B8 sport shocks with H&R lowering springs, and I cannot stand it. I hate the way the car rides. I bought a Mercedes and I wanted to ride like a Mercedes, but not like a waterbed on wheels, like the refined muscle car that this is supposed to be. Now that physical damage is beginning to occur, it's definitely time for a change. But before we tackle any of that, there's a noticeable vibration when you drive the car down the road, and the wheel bearing is the culprit. So sit back and relax while I show you what it takes to change the wheel bearings on this magnificent machine. So how do I even know a car needs a wheel bearing? First telltale sign is that it has a noticeable vibration when it drives down the road. And the way that we will verify it's a wheel bearing is by putting your hand at 12 and at 6 on the wheel and shaking the wheel back and forth. It may be hard to see, but you can definitely hear it. The first step in the process is to take the wheel off. 17mm socket right here. With the wheel off, all the brake components are now visible. The goal is to access the hub. So what we have to do is we have to take the caliper off. In order to do that, this anti-rattle spring comes off first. These come off pretty easy. It's probably a little prying action here. Quick trick that'll help you out. Whenever I do brakes, I like to leave the key in the ignition so the steering column remains unlocked. That allows me to rotate the assembly, and it makes it much easier to access all the hardware on this side of the caliper. In order to get the caliper off, you have to remove the slide pins here and here. These are behind little dust covers. Dust covers come right off like that. Don't even need tools. These are a 7mm Allen socket. Sometimes these slide bolts will not come out. So what I do is get an adjustable pliers and just go in there. Because these brakes are worn, I have to compress the piston of the caliper in order to remove it from the rotor. The rotor develops a lip on it, and because of that, this caliper, even though it's not fastened, it will not come off of there. So what you do is you take a pry bar, get it in here, and just give it a pry. What this is doing is this is pulling on the outer side of the caliper and creating space. Now, after doing that, you can see that the caliper is now loose, and it should come right off of the caliper bracket. So now that the caliper is free, the only thing that's holding it up is the hydraulic brake line and the wire that goes to the brake pad wear sensor. So what you have to do is you have to take a bungee cord like this, fasten it to whatever that you can. You can see here that the bungee cord is wrapped around the upper control arm, and then it hooks to the spring, and it's holding the caliper up. There's no tension on that caliper right now. Next, we need to get to the caliper bracket bolts. I left the key in the ignition. Rotate this assembly so we have easy access. 18mm bolts here and here. Caliper bracket. Next step is to get the rotor off. There's actually a retaining bolt here. That's a 5mm Allen socket that just holds the rotor to the hub. Rotor. Now we have access to the hub assembly. Next step in the process is to take this dust cap off. A hammer and a chisel on this tapered joint right here will do the trick. With the dust cap off, the retaining nut is now revealed. This is what holds the wheel bearing and hub assembly to the spindle. It doesn't simply just thread on there. There's a 5mm Allen bolt that actually clamps down on that retainer nut in order to hold it all together. So to remove it, we just undo that 5mm Allen and we're good to go. Now the hub assembly should pull right off. Here is what the hub looks like on the bench. This is the outer tapered roller bearing. Now right now there's a very pungent odor of burnt grease. Either the bearing failed or some dirt got in there. I could see this is a little loose. Here you can see the inner race for that outer bearing. And then we have a larger tapered roller bearing on this side. But the first thing that we have to do is pry this seal off. Thank you everybody so much for watching. Don't forget to tune into part 2, where we continue with the wheel bearing replacement on this magnificent machine.